First question goes to Loretta. Loretta, you are the wife of an evangelist.
Yes, sir.
What has been the hardest thing? When I think of that, I think of you hearing the same sermons all the time, a different church every week. And don't speak to me. Address the ladies. What's maybe in a minute or so, just what has been one of the hardest things with that?
Probably the hardest thing is just not being in the same place every week. I mean, we're in a different place every week. And the long drives, it could get weary. You could get weary everybody could get weary though in any type of work that you're doing. And what I do is make sure that I'm excited about souls being saved. I try to keep my focus on what I'm supposed to be doing so I don't get weary in the other things like breaking down on the side of the road. Some of you are my Facebook friends. You see, we just break down on a regular. I stopped posting and then all of a sudden I said, you know what? People really like to know I'm broken down, so I'll let them know.
Okay, let's start here at the end. Do you have a pet name for your husband? If so, just what is that name? Karen, we'll start with you and just work around the room here. Okay?
Don't tell him. A pet name for him?
Use the microphone.
A pet name for him?
Pet name, you call him, maybe in front of the kid. I mean, is it always Clint?
No.
Okay, so.
Usually sweetheart or babe, and he calls me beloved.
Okay, Terry?
Babe.
Babe, okay.
Sweet Patootie. Because our name is Tudor. Okay. Sweet Patootie.
Okay, all right. Patty?
Usually honey.
Honey?
Dingbat.
Okay, Loretta?
What he calls me or what I call him?
No, what you call him.
Hot stuff. I had it in my phone for years, and then people didn't understand, so I took it out.
Okay.
I think I've always called him my Eli. Yeah, when I write notes, I put my Eli. Yeah.
What about just verbally, though? Is it?
I think it's just easy, babe. I think that's what it is.
Hot stuff.
Get out of here. You have never called me that.
Does that mean you're not a hot stuff?
Brother Ray, you're turning red. You're turning red. I thought you meant I'm sorry.
What?
I thought you meant what he calls me.
Oh, no.
I thought you called Roy Dingbat. I thought you were JoJo.
Do we need to send you an email?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone. You want to try again?
I don't know. I have different names, but one thing I'll say, hey, Roy boy.
Oh.
Yeah, like that.
Roy boy. Okay.
Well, wait a minute. I got to know from Verna what she calls you.
She calls me Hun.
Hun.
Hun. Good.
And Dad, and even when my brothers were little, people said, what are your parents' names? And they said Verna and Hun.
That's cute. Babe.
But, yeah, babe. All right, well, good. Karen, you grew up in a pastor's home, and we grew up in the same youth group, same church. Can you maybe just take a moment and just tell them, what did you do as a teen for the Lord? Like, what ministries did you serve in, and what did you do for the Lord as a teenager?
Well, I worked in the bus ministry from throughout all my teen years, and I've been a bus captain now for 20 years at our church. Wow. When I was a younger teenager, just like in seventh grade, well, actually, it was before I was even a teenager, around fifth grade, my girlfriends and I wanted a ministry, and so we thought we're going to have a prayer ministry. And so every time the service came, we would look around for somebody that we thought needed to be saved. And all through the service, we would pray for them. And then when the invitation came, we come to the altar and we would pray for that person. And that was our ministry. And it was one of those times that we prayed for that big Cajun man that came in the purple leisure suit and platform heels, and we saw him and thought he needs to be saved, and so we prayed for him.
And what was his name?
And that was Keith Gomez.
Isn't that something? Isn't that amazing? That's great. Terry, you were a collegiate gymnast. We've always wondered, what was your routine? Did you do the parallel bars, balance beam? What kind of did you do?
I actually was all around, so I did all 4 areas, though you're supposed to stay on the beam, so that wasn't my best area, but I love the floor. That was my favorite, and then the bars and the vault.
Now, what's that mean? You love the floor? What's
I love the floor exercise routine.
So what was that?
So that was kind of dancing to music is basically what it was.
Kind of like what Loretta was doing last night on the platform. That same thing.
The only exercise I get, preacher.
I see. Now, did you go past college? The rumor is you competed for the Olympics.
Yeah, I started that. I did compete in college in Winona State University in Minnesota, and I competed for a couple years, and then I had a man coach named Steve Jawared. He was a slave driver. He worked us, and so he was not happy with me one day because I was doing a dismount from the high bar, and you're not supposed to take any little steps when you land. And so I was crouched on top of the high bar, and I thought, okay, I'm going to show him this time. I'm going to show him I can stick this dismount. And so I did my back somersault, and I landed, and my right knee bent in, and because I was trying so hard to land my dismount, and I fell backwards, and our complex was like 4 gyms in one big building. And so the basketball team was practicing down at the other end. Obviously, they heard my screams, and then all the basketball team came running over. So I'm laying on the floor with all these tall, good-looking, handsome men surrounding me, but I was in too much pain to enjoy it. So anyway, that was sad. But I tried to come back from that. I even ordered from New York a knee brace that Joe Namath also wore because I wanted to compete again so bad. But once you have fear, you can't do gymnastics. So then I went on to judging meets from there.
Wow. Well, that's cool. Carol, you got married later in life. Was there ever a time, and you don't have to answer this, during that time between being single and being married, was there ever a time a guy was really, really interested in you and you thought about settling?
That's a good question. I did do that. I had that. I
remember him.
Yeah, I could have gotten married with no problem. There was 2 men that I could have married. And one I really loved, and I really believe he was my perfect will of God. He married somebody else. He was fairly new Christian, and then I was dating somebody, and I was making myself date him like this is your last chance. And you're always thinking about the clock ticking. You want to have kids, and so I was 33, and I went to see Brother Hiles. And one of the things that saved me from making mistakes was I had a cabinet of counselors as a single lady. I had the Frys, my mom and dad, the Hileses, and the Evanses, 6 people, and I said I wouldn't go against him. I went to see Brother Hiles, and I talked to him, and he said, Carol, you have been in an unusual place of leadership, so you're going to have to marry somebody rather unique. He said, I believe if the right man comes along, we'll all know it. And so I said, okay. And he said, I think you should put marriage on the back burner. Don't turn the heat off. Put it on the back burner and just keep serving the Lord. And then, it was 12 years later, believe it or not, when Richard came along. So, and my husband is a lot like my dad. And I had a dad who was a major in World War II, and he had a great sense of humor. And my husband is always keeping me. He's like you. He's very witty. And so that I think I was looking for someone more like my dad.
Well, good. Patty, 8 children. What are the ages? What is the spread?
So 24 to the oldest is I think around 44.
Okay, so how many girls, how many boys?
4 of each.
4 of each. Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Jojo, you've been in the bus ministry, I think it's now 57 years. Can you just, maybe in about 2 minutes, tell us your schedule on Saturday, your visiting schedule. How would you do that at this time?
It's varied in the last several months. It's had to change because of health situations and bones and knees and all that kind of stuff. But we used to meet always. We'd meet together and pray together, and then we'd go to various areas of the route. I always would go to the new kids. I always did that. And then I'd visit most all of them. Our route would start, we'd go to 6-7 hours a day. We used to do it. And when our kids were little, they loved doing it with us. And my husband was involved in this. The route for us is very different because we started our route with Dr. Dennis Streeter on Route 12. That's where we started 57 years ago. So my responsibilities there were different. I would just ride the bus. And if you can just ride the bus, that's good. And if you can't ride the bus, maybe make treats. You can pray for the bus routes, that type of thing. But I wanted to be with Roy. That was big to me. We worked together the bus route. And then from that route, we went to start the Great Lakes Naval Bus Route. And it was 72 miles one way. And I thought everyone did this. We'd get up in the morning and we'd go there. We'd spend all day long visiting with our children, came with us. Jim Binney was a good friend of ours, is a good friend of ours. His wife would babysit for the kids. We'd take the kids somewhat, take them out to eat, and then to go play. We'd visit there, we'd go back, I'd go home, I'd make a meal kind of similar to yours. Anywhere from like 22 to 72 people ate with us every Sunday afternoon at our house. And I'd make things like sloppy JoJo's, we'd have spaghetti, we'd have mustacholi, things like that. And then take them back to the base. And then when it got bigger, we'd keep them on the weekends at our house. And then you started driving buses and working on routes. Wow. Then I went to Route 32. I've been on 89 routes in Chicago. My husband and I worked that with the college ministry. Then Brother Vineyard had me take Route 32. I've been on that route, and I was captain 47 years. Wow. And I'm now in the third generation of people we're reaching from the same family. Wow. So it varies per, I ride the bus every single week. I ride it to this, I'll be on, Lord willing, I'll be on the route to Sunday. The kids have just certain things, like I'll say, if you're not here, raise your hand, and everyone raises their hand, and we do just silly fun things. And they said on my tomb, it's going to say, welcome to Hammond, the city of trains, just little things like that. Love the people. We've watched the grandmas to the children, now the grandchildren. Okay. And it's just that type of thing. It varies per year.
Wonderful. Loretta, can you take just a moment, maybe about a minute and a half, tell us about that wreck when y'all's motorhome was in that wreck? I remember that was...
in 2004.
It was life-threatening.
We were traveling through Missouri, and it was a light drizzle rain, and we had a over-the-cab fifth wheel and a big semi that we were driving at that point, and Jeannie was laying in the back seat of the semi because it made into a bed, and the two boys and I were in the fifth wheel, which we didn't do that often, but we'd been in California, and we had driven all the way to there, Kevin and I taking turns driving, and so I had went back so the boys could get a little nap, and then I woke up, and it was like 3 a.m, and I called Kevin and said, I'm ready to drive if you want me to drive, and he said, okay, I'll pull off the next exit. And so as soon as I hung up the phone, I knew we were going to have a wreck. It puts a feeling in your stomach. But we started fishtailing, and it was a light drizzle, rain, and new patch of pavement. So it ended up that I and the two boys, when everything started, and as soon as I knew we were going to wreck, Miss Verna, I said, God, I've trusted you all these years with my life, and I trust you now with this wreck. So... And I remember thinking that, and I meant it with all my heart. And so whenever everything stopped, and this is the end of the story for me, whenever everything stopped, I was laying on top of a big piece of oak furniture that faced the bed. It was laying flat, because when everything was done, the fifth wheel was a flatbed. It was just nothing there. It was completely an empty trailer. And so I was laying on that piece of oak furniture. KW was next to me, and Joe was next to him, and the mattress itself that we had been laying on was on top of us. There was no oomph, I didn't feel any jolt, I didn't feel anything. Wow. And I just pushed the mattress off us. Little Joe was like 8 years old. He said, what happened? I'll never forget that. He said, what happened? And I said, we've had a wreck, and I just jumped up and got into action. But tell
him where Kevin was, though, just for a quick.
Well, he had been driving, and just when I called him, he took his seatbelt off to move around. And so he flew through the windshield and was in the driving lane because we were going south, and we were going north. Yeah, we were going south, and we ended up in the northbound lanes. The truck was in one lane, and he was laying in the driving lane. And two truckers, when I was over there with Kevin, they walked up to me. I saw their trucks pulled off to the side, and they said, has he been here? He said, have you moved him? And I said, no, he's been there the whole time. They looked at me very shaken, and they said, we don't know what it is that kept us from running over him. Because it was 3 a.m, it was dark, rain, it was. And I said, well, I know that we serve a living God, and he must have just wanted to keep him going. That's what I said to them, but that's highlights.
Wow, that's wonderful. So it's not always fame and fortune, huh? Yeah, so thank the Lord for that. Faith, I hope this is okay. When you were in college, you were looking for a job, and there was a bookstore that wanted... You don't have to answer. I mean, I've got other questions.
Yeah, I am a bookworm, love to read. And so when I was looking for a college job, we didn't really have a lot of internet, so I was looking through the newspaper, and I found a job right next to the college, and it was a bookstore, and I thought, I would love to work at a bookstore. Now, it was an adult bookstore, which was even better. It wasn't just children's books. So I called them, and I left a very long message telling them why I would be great to be hired at the adult bookstore. And to God be the glory, I did not get a call back.
Well, it's her story. It's not my story. So, babe, what would you say was the most life-altering event that happened to you after you graduated from high school up there in Maine?
Yes, it was the summer after I graduated from high school. I didn't know what to do. And I didn't have a pastor. My parents said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. If you make the wrong decision, you'll blame us. And so Aunt Pat, who is 10 years older than me, she would visit us every summer, my sister and I, and just talk all night long about spiritual things. And we had a desire to do what God wanted us to do. And so she asked me, she said, what are you going to do? I says, nothing. She said, I kind of like this guy here, and I'll probably stay here. No. She said, we are driving to Maine from Indiana tonight. And she said, we're going to come get you and take you to Bible college. No, drag you to Bible college. And so she came and she said, get in the car. That really pushy. Yep. But that's what I needed. That summer, after you graduate from high school, the devil wants to grab it real quick. And that first month at Bible college, she said, make sure you remember there's always a reason for every rule that they have. First month, Mrs. Evans spoke, split chapel about to the ladies, and it changed my life. Totally.
Good. Okay, Faith, you were a staff member before you were a pastor's wife, and I'm sure there were times where finances were tight. Can you just tell us a few things you did as a wife to try to generate income to the family?
Well, I was told by another staff member that we could not live on one income. And I taught 3 years in the Christian school, and I was very pregnant, so I stopped teaching in May, and I had my baby in July. And I said, well, in my heart, my decision, I want to stay home and raise my baby. And everybody said, no, you can't do that in California. And I said, then we'll make sacrifices to do that. And we paid off debt. We moved into a one-bedroom apartment. We did all of these things. I did tutoring jobs, and when my husband got home and I left, and juggled back and forth. But I looked at my little firstborn and a reader and smart and all these things, and I thought, I wouldn't trade any luxuries for spending time with my baby. But that was the decision we made, and I think God honored it.
Tell them about putting little business cards on cars and giving them out to the parents.
Yeah, I started a little tutoring business in my home where people would bring me their kids after school, and we would go through basics, and I would go to public schools and pass out cards to the parents in the parking lots. And that wasn't really me. I didn't like to self-promote, but I did that. God put some ideas in my head and just went forward with it.
Okay, great. Loretta, how about this one? You're starting to write a good bit. Not everyone's a writer. Can you just maybe tell us when all that kind of started in your heart?
Well, of course, being around Marlene Evans, those of you that had seen her and heard her speak, she said that you don't really write, you just speak on paper. Now, when she said that, that makes sense, and I like to talk. So I took over the Christian Womanhood magazine in 2013, which forced me into writing at least once a month. But even before that, because she said speak on paper, I did my first book, which was Possess and Peace, because I had a lot on my heart that I'd like to share with people, but I don't write well, but I have good editors that
Good.
edit and make it sound right.
great.
So that's my secret.
Good. Jojo, where did you meet Roy? Where did you meet him?
At the park. It was Labor Day of 1962. I was double dating with his brother and my best friend. And yeah, this is a true story. And your eyes went up like, really? The fellow I was dating, or not dating, was 6'9", and he was a star basketball player. He was going back to, I think, school at the University of Wyoming, if I'm not mistaken. And so Roy came up to me. It's just a very spiritual thing I'm going to explain. I was holding the quarters as the man was gambling, trying to win me a teddy bear. And I was handing him the quarters, and Roy walked up to me because his brother was double dating. He said, "What are you, Steve's banker?" And I said, "Who is this guy?" I said, "Well, yes, I guess." And he said, "Well, are you good?" And then it's really funny. He came up to me later. He was kind of a person, just appear. He would just appear out of nowhere, and said, "Well, hi, how are you?" "Oh, it's you again. Hi." And that night, that he said, "Are you going out with Steve tonight?" And I said, "No, I'm not going. This is the next day," because I was 5 minutes late coming home, and I was grounded. I have a Catholic background, and they were strict on that. And he said, I bet you will go out with him tomorrow. And I says, "No, I don't think I'll go out with him." My dad was upset. He goes, "I'll bet you a milkshake that you're going to go out with him." And so it's a bet now. I'm going from gambling to a bet. So the next day, sure enough, he said, "So you're going out with Steve?" I said, "No, I was late." That's when this came about. And he says, "Well, I guess I owe you a milkshake." So I walked with him to the Condis restaurant. We got a milkshake. My straw broke, and I was sucking air, but I was embarrassed to tell him. So I never drank the milkshake. He drank the whole thing, and I'm not bitter about it. God bless you. And so he said, "Well, Steve's going away to college. That's so bad." It wasn't so bad at all. Roy just kept appearing and appearing and appearing, and I didn't really care for him that much. He was very nice, don't get me wrong. But my girlfriend, this is so horrible. My best friend said, "Why don't you like him?" And I said, "I don't know. He's nice." "No, it's not. I don't like him. I'm just not interested." And she said, "Well, this is horrible." "Well, if you don't like him, I will." This is a true story. And needless to say, we've now been dating as of this September, Labor Day. It'll be 60 years. We are married 57 years this past Tuesday, and I think it's getting real serious.
Patty, one last question for you. You mentioned your husband battled depression. Was that his entire life, or did it come and go? Was it related to the military? Maybe just a couple of minutes. I mean, how did you deal with that?
So the first time, about 20 years ago, he went through about a 9-month depression, and he did not want to seek medical help. At first, I was really judgmental, and I just was like, "Where's your joy of the Lord? What is wrong with you?" And I could see he was in his Bible. He was still studying. He spent a lot of time in the Word of God. And so I was judgmental. And then the Lord really worked on me about just love your husband. Just be there for him. And so I began to treat him much more kindly. And then towards the very end of that particular depression, which you could go on YouTube, and he did it back, I think, at pastor's school. He talked about depression. Yeah. And so towards the very end of that, we met with a young lady, and she was getting ready to be married. And he said to her, she said something about she was really sad. She was getting ready to get married. And he said, "Why would you be sad?" And she said, "I'm sad because my dad committed suicide and he can't walk me down the aisle." And that really touched my husband's heart. And then a couple of times during that depression, he had called me and said, he felt suicidal. He was thinking about the Golden State Bridge, I think it was, that he was driving across. And if anything happened, there's life insurance money. I said, do you know you can't get life insurance if you commit suicide? And so that stopped him.
Unbelievable.
So,
That's wise counsel.
but he's battled it a few times. He has, but you know the miracle, I have to tell you this open heart surgery, stroke, and seizures, no depression. God's been so good to us. So.
Thank you for that. Carol, have you always wanted to be a nurse when you were a little girl? Was that just always?
Yes, I brought in all these sick animals to my house. I found this pheasant dead, and she was sitting on these eggs, so I took the eggs and I put them in the fry pan, and I covered them with a little towel, and I was trying to hatch them. Then I brought a little nest of mice. My mother's, you're not bringing those in. Then I would bring everybody, I had like a little, I don't know, like sort of a clinic in my garage, and I had a little handicapped friend. I drug her down there, and I made my brother like he was like the orderly, and he did what I said, and I was the bossy older sister, but I actually wanted to be a social worker. And my dad, who was he worked at the University of Chicago, he goes, social workers have to go into bad neighborhoods, and he said, what about being a nurse? So then I went to my mother, she worked at a doctor's office, and I went down there and started filling up bottles and getting, with the syringes and working with everything. And so, but we nurses we're an unusual breed. I have a heart, my husband often says to me after I get off the phone, he goes, Carol, you care way more than the person does that you're trying to help. They're not going to do everything you say, and I really do. When someone's suffering, it's like I take it into myself. And so, I can actually remember several of my cardiac arrests I worked on, people who died that I didn't get to witness to. That always sort of haunts me. But I just got, Mrs. Muchler says you've got a mother's heart. I call it a nurse's heart. I have deep compassion, and I hate to see people in pain. So I still love animals. I still love sick people. I'm weird.
Okay. Terry, you were a married mother when you and your husband went to Bible college. Maybe take a minute or two and just kind of tell us how difficult that was and how the Lord kind of got you through that time.
Because we both had gone to a state college previous to that, and so we'd already been to college. And so then we got married, and then we ran a children's home for juvenile delinquent teenagers for 3.5 years as we lived in Ohio. There was always 6 living with us at a time. And so that was a ministry we did. It was hard, but many kids got saved, many of the parents got saved. And so when my husband came to me and said, I think God wants me to do more. God wants me to go to a Bible college. Now, I had just gotten saved before I got married. And then I said, well, what's a Bible college? I didn't even know what a Bible college was. But at that point, I was happy to stop the home for the juvenile delinquents living with us because our boys were 3 and 2 at the time, and they were starting to have an influence on our own children. So I was like, okay, let's go. But so I had 2 children, and I was 6 months expecting our 3rd one, and we went off to Bible college. And it's actually kind of funny because the handbook at that time said that if you're out in public and you're just the spouse of the student, you're supposed to be wearing nylons. Well, I was 6 months expecting, and we had no money. I'm like, I'm sorry if you get demerits, babe. Sorry, I'm not wearing nylons in public. I had a bad spirit, but you just couldn't afford it all. So I think the hard part for me was my husband was gone all the time. For 4 years, I felt like a single parent, having the babies, having 4 children, taking care of them. I loved it when the college offered a free class for the college wife. Like, that was a shot in the arm for me. And they provided nursery, so I could go to that one class. Like, you have no idea what that would mean to a college wife who's home all the time with all the little kids. Pastor would come home like for 40 minutes for lunch and then go back to the second shift job. And so I think that was the hardest part for me, was it was me and the kids. It was me and the kids for 4 years. And there was some really, everybody has hard financial times, but there was a season where, well, it was cloth diapers, and so we couldn't afford the other ones, and so everything broke in our house, and I was washing the cloth diapers in the kitchen sink and the towels in the bathtub. So, like, it was very rare we had a dry towel. Like, it took a really long time for them to dry. But I have no complaints because God made me there. Right. God made me there, and I'm thankful for it. Amen.
Thank you for finishing. Thank you. Karen, you're the last question. Here we go. You guys were in a huge church. You and your husband were on staff there in Texas, and then you left everybody to move to Oregon, a small town, small church. How did that kind of come about, and what's the advantage you saw?
Well, my husband always, he thought the Lord was going to, when he took a pastorate, he really was looking at Miami or some, huge city like that, and really thought the Lord may move us someplace like that. When we first got the call about coming to Oregon, my husband said, "I'm happy where I am. I'm not going to move." And anyway, that pastor called us over and over again until finally my husband said, "Okay, I will pray about it." And it was just clear that that's where God wanted us to move. So he left the Dallas-Fort Worth area in a large ministry and came to this little church who had, struggling and a pastor failure before and just different things like that. And, wasn't many people, and half of those were the Pathfinders. And that was special. Anyway, it was quite a shock just to be in a different, it almost was a culture shock just being in this smaller town. And probably the most surprising things to us is when we would go out soul winning. We lived in the Bible Belt, and, everybody, whether they were saved or not, talked about loving God, and they respected pastors. And you would, anytime you met a little old lady, they would, invite you in and tell you about teaching Sunday school and all like that. My first week of going out soul winning in Oregon, I knock on this door, and this elderly lady comes out, and at first she's just fine, and then as soon as I mention God, her whole countenance changes. She curses me out, tells me what she's going to do to me if I don't get off her property. And I'm like, whoa. And then that happened over and over. And it was just amazing, the difference. And, I was used to being able to lead somebody to the Lord every week, and it's different in Oregon. And you just have to go and keep on and keep on and keep on and not give up to find someone that you can win to the Lord. And it's just it was a different place. I was bringing some teenage girls home, and it was really different when they said, "Well, no, we can't come to church tonight. We've got to take our pigs for a walk." And I thought, I never had that excuse before in Arlington, But it's been a wonderful place. We love our folks and our people, and we have a Walmart now, and we didn't have a Walmart for a long time, and it's just really grown. In the 28 years we've been there, our population has boomed, and we've grown 2,000 people in that time. But and they're all from California. But the Lord used it to. It was a wonderful place to raise children, yes. And just to train our children, and they grew up in the woods with Dad and fishing and doing the things like that they've really enjoyed, and a lot of things that been able to build into our children that we've seen a benefit now as Amen. They're on the mission field.
Well, that's great.